welcome to Caesar's Snack Sandwich. Today I have a really quick video for you on vector reserve. Now someone sent this to me today and said, hey, you should check this out, okay? So I've gone through the docs as always. I've read through all of this and I've also, checked out the front end and stuff like that. Now it's a pretty simple thing to explain. There's not a whole lot to explain here, but I will use the docs to explain it to you. But there is a couple of red flags that kind of stand off. Like I don't know, like we don't know who these people are, who's created this. It's and the Telegram is even a dead link. So you can consider this kind of like an anonymous team right now until you find out who those people are, what are their history and stuff like that. However, that being said, like these docs are clearly written by somebody who understands DeFi and has experience with DeFi and liquid staking tokens and stuff like this. So you can take that as a pro as opposed to not a red flag. Like these people obviously know DeFi. Okay, so I've read through all of this. There is a lot of words in here, but they don't really say a lot. There's a lot of questions left unanswered, okay? So I'm going to kind of jump around in here and kind of just talk a little bit about what's going on here, okay? So first of all, if you go to the front end here, you can kind of see that you can only use vETH to mint this vector ETH, right? Now this is a one-way road. So if you take vETH and you mint vETH, then you're most likely going to have to try to sell vETH for vETH if you want to exit the position. There is some talk in here about like redemptions, but I'll get to that in a second, okay? So let's kind of go through each of these tabs and I'll just talk a little bit about some of the things in here. Okay, so this one kind of explains what it is overly, and it kind of talks a little bit generally, and then there's everything that's here is kind of repeated in more depth down here. So I'm gonna go to the second one, okay? So the first thing that's very interesting is this superfluid staking and LP derivatives. So like I said, you can use ETH to mint this vector ETH. However, what they're going to do with that ETH that you give them, or in the future when they allow LSTs to mint the vector ETH, they're going to use those to create liquidity positions. And then those liquidity positions are owned by the treasury, the protocol. So then they're going to gather certain kinds of rewards, right? And they talk a little bit about here about like treasury management and stuff like that, and kind of like moving the assets around inside those pools to kind of optimize. But they don't talk exactly like some sort of like, 20% will be here, 30% will be there, 10% will be here. They kind of just say that they're going to do it, right? So they're going to kind of watch these liquidity pools that have, these different ETH and LSDs as well as vector ETH with those inside liquidity pools, and they're going to, farm tokens, reward tokens. They're going to farm trading fees, and they're going to do this thing called superfluid staking. Now, this is very interesting. This would be something that I found to be, this is new news to me, and I think it's very interesting. And basically what it is it's a new kind of eigenlayer restaking, where instead of staking like some sort of LST into eigenlayer, they're allowing you to stake a LP token. So let's say WST ETH and ETH, or WST ETH and maybe even vector ETH. Like these tokens can be staked into eigenlayer. So now that instead of putting just a LST, which has like 4% interest rate, into eigenlayer and gaining the eigenlayer points, you're staking, like a LST plus ETH, getting trading fees, getting that 4%, and staking it into the eigenlayer to get those eigenlayer points. So this is very, very interesting. And they just talk about how there's a lot of words in here to basically say that. Okay. Um, they talk a lot about like diversification inside here, and diversification is a good thing and a bad thing. Okay, like diversifying your assets to buying many different kinds of LSTs and holding them is not the same as holding this token. Okay, so if you hold this token, then the treasury has diversifies its risk across all of these different LSTs, as well as the smart contract risk that they decide to incorporate. Uh, but if there's any exploit or any issues with any of those assets, it's going to cause a bank run on vETH or this vETH because everybody will not want their tokens to take on that risk. So I think diversification is not a great a great aspect inside this treasury because like they will be able to, if instead of a black swan wiping them out, they might be able to recover if only one like 10% or 20% of their assets are backed by something that gets exploited. So there is that benefit of diversification. So it's kind of like a good and a bad depending on how you look at it, right? They talk a lot about like the treasury use uh, taking on this risk management. As you can see that like there's only wETH right now. So I believe they don't say, they don't have a clear plan of which LSTs they're going to use, which ones they're not going to use, and also how are they going to assess which one's risky and which one's not. There's no there's no like spelling out of this kind of information. Okay, now here's where they talk about peg maintenance, which is very important for an asset like this because you can't redeem. You cannot take your vETH. If you were to mint vETH right now, there's no button there to turn your vETH back into ETH, right? So they have to maintain the peg of this vETH token. So they talk about the tools that they're going to use, but they don't explicitly say how those tools are going to work. Okay, so first they talk about, oh, it's backed one to one, but it is, but is it really? Because I can't redeem. Like that's a being backed doesn't, to me, in my opinion, in order for it to be actually to be able to say it's backed, there must be redemption. Okay, but maybe not. Maybe you can say, oh, there's no redemption. You can sell it in the market, but this thing was minted one to one with ETH, right? Now it does say one to one here with ETH and ETH denominated derivatives, so the LSTs. So I assume that the LSTs are generally worth more than ETH because they generally are a baked in yield like our Rocket Pool ETH or WST ETH. So that yield, I assume that it's not going to be one to one. If they allow you to mint with some sort of LST, I believe it's not going to be a one to one, but it doesn't clearly say that here either. Okay. Now they talk about collateralization using this one-to-one instead of just some other token. It gives market confidence. There's a lot of words in here, but it doesn't really help me to feel confident, in my opinion. Like this is well written. If you take a time to pause it and read it, you'll understand what I mean. Stability mechanism. This is what I'm talking about. This is the most important thing. Like how are they going to keep the ETH on peg? Okay, so they talk about this. Let's read through a few of these because this is probably the key factor of this protocol. Okay, the system dynamically responds to market discrepancies, allowing for quick adjustments to maintain the peg of VE as directed by the formula below. So this doesn't really explain to me what are they going to do when the peg is below. Okay, if the peg is above, like if people are buying this asset off the market and the peg goes above, it's very simple. People are just going to mint and dump on them. That's very simple. But what happens when people start like selling this vETH? They want out, right? Then it's going to go below peg. It doesn't clearly say here how they're going to defend the bottom of the peg. Okay, let's read this next one. Market efficiency. It allows for the opportunity for any market participant to capitalizing on arbitrage opportunities for their own benefit, in turn keeping VE peg in check. So this sounds a lot like them saying that anyone can mint vETH and sell it, right? So again, upside peg is going to be very easy to arbitrage. But if you can't redeem, then the system cannot defend the bottom side. Okay. Now there is yield. There is quite a bit of yield in here. So maybe the protocol or the team or the treasury will defend the bottom with that yield. But it doesn't say that here. Okay. But that is a definite possibility. Okay. Yield management as a value support. So now that's kind of what this kind of implies, that the yield that it is obtaining can be used to reinforce this peg. But again, it doesn't clearly say like if the peg is here, then we will do this, right? Like it doesn't clearly give that. So we'll see kind of I guess, what they do, right? Responsive liquidity provision. This is kind of like the treasury is going to have a crap ton of LPs in it, right? Assuming that these people are minting this like crazy. So they are able to then move, pull liquidity, add liquidity, uh, pull liquidity from one, buy from another, and they can probably produce some arbitrage opportunities to kind of defend this peg, okay? But it still sounds a little bit scary for the downside to me, okay? Collateralization and redemption mechanisms. This is the key thing here. In case of black swans, in rare cases, the protocol can enable redemptions where the underlying assets are returned in exchange for vETH, ensuring price parity. So this sounds like they can turn on redemptions if they deem so. But again, there's no like, if the protocol is below peg for 2 weeks by this much, then automatically you can redeem. No, it's going to be the team deciding, okay, let's turn on redemptions. Okay, so which is good, but it's not perfect, right? It's not the perfectest thing, but we'll see what happens. Okay, um, so vETH, you can stake this vETH, and if you stake the vETH, you're going to be able to gain some of these yield. Like, so basically what it's saying here is if you stake this vETH, you're going to be able to get that yield, okay? So the trading fees they accrue, the governance tokens they farm, the superfluid staking is going to go to these VE. Because if you take the VE and you just hold VE, you're getting nothing. You're basically holding a derivative of ETH that you cannot redeem back to ETH. So in order to gain the yield that this protocol is proposing that they're going to be able to produce, you have to stake the vETH. So you lock it up, but it doesn't have a locking period. Just I guess it's just a stake and unstake at any time. But again, it doesn't say it doesn't implicitly say no lockups, but I believe that there are no lockups. I did not test that. Okay. Um, let's see where else. What else was important here? It talks a lot about here, like if you like the benefits of this wETH gives you like lots of different exposures. It's kind of diversified things. It gives like people who don't really know stuff that gives them a chance to get their feet wet without having to decide, oh, should I use this one, that one, or that, blah blah blah. Now they do have a token, the vETH token. They say that it's going to get a portion of the yields and fees generated by blah blah blah. But again, there's nowhere in here that talks about any fees anywhere. So I don't know what the fees are or where they're charging fees, and how much of the yield do the vETH token holders, this governance token, get. So if the governance token's taking some of the yield, then the vETH stakers are not getting some of that yield, right? So anyhow, treasury management. So eventually this vETH token will have, like as you can see, vETH, and there'll be more voting and direction of that treasury. So they will apparently grow this protocol as a team and then hand it over to the DAO. That's the vision that they illustrate here. Okay. Incentivizing liquidity provision. They will use this vETH token to bribe and to also maybe put on gauges in places like bribe curve voters or stuff like this to kind of uh, to vote on it, or maybe just put vETH right onto the gauges and stuff like that. So they talk here about the tokenomics are very controlled and stuff like that. And in order to actually get these vETH tokens, you have to do some bonding. So you can bond for these vETH tokens, or you can farm these vETH tokens, but it doesn't say that the protocol needs to bond for them. So that's another question I wasn't clear. It seems to me that the protocol can mint vETH tokens and use them to incentivize liquidity. But if you want vETH tokens, you can obviously farm them, you can buy them, or you can bond for them. And if you bond for them, then you're going to be giving more ETH to the treasury to produce yield for their system, right? And then a governance decision making. And then they talk here about the possibility of the future. There being some vote escrow. Like again, it doesn't talk in here about locking times or anything like that. It's kind of more like a future consideration, like maybe a roadmap thing that's down the road and so forth. And then they also talk about these vETH liquidity position derivatives, which basically a liquidity provision derivative is a token that you get for providing liquidity to some sort of thing like a Uniswap or Curve, and then that thing is put into these restaking staking superfluid stake restaking on eigenlayer. Okay, so now I think this is pretty interesting. I really like this superfluid staking thing because obviously this is better. If you are staking liquidity pool tokens, then you are than just restaking spot ETH, so to speak, right? It's obviously better because then there are liquidity trading fees for you as well as you are providing liquidity to the general ecosystem so people can trade. I really think this superfluid restaking thing is the best thing in here. I'm a little bit scared about the redemption stuff and the fact that the treasury is kind of it appears to be will be managed by what I can only tell right now is a completely anonymous team and I don't have any idea who they might be and so forth. So that's pretty much it today. Of course, my video does not cover this thing perfectly because I've only read these docs. I haven't gone to anywhere and asked any questions. I haven't tested this thing out and I haven't looked at any of the smart contracts. So I don't know how much of this stuff they talk about is actually automated or will be done manually. Okay, so this is something if you are planning on investing in this or using this to you, these are some things you should probably consider looking at. Okay, so that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching and goodbye.